Now, it will take about 135 years to close the gender gap in sub-Saharan Africa. There have been efforts to try and close it. And when you take a look at how Kenya fares on the Global Gender Gap Index, it sits at position 95 out of 156 countries. This is an improvement from position 114, but we still have a long way to go. Now, with International Women's Day around the corner and 3 years into a global pandemic, we decided to have a conversation on what women voters want this election cycle on the Voters Hub. But before we discuss this, let's take a look at the gender space in Kenya. Now, let's take a look at the political arena. Back in 2017, 3 women were elected as senators. 3 other women were elected as governors. That is now down to 2 after the death of the late Bomet governor, Joyce Laboso. 98 women were elected as MCAs. And even with this progress, just 172 of the available over 1,800 elected seats are women. And in other sectors, women are faring much better, more than making the 2/3 gender principle. Out of the practicing lawyers in Kenya, 57% are women. The magistrates, 49% are women. And when it comes to the wage gap, women in Kenya earn 68 shillings for every 100 shillings that their male counterparts earn. When you look at the private sector, women earn 83% that of their male counterparts. And in the national government, that goes down to 79%. In higher learning, 2 out of every 5 university students are women. And on our farmlands, 4 out of 5 farm laborers are women, but women own just 1% of agricultural land. So it is clear a lot more still needs to be done to close the gender gap. Well, let's get to our conversation on the Voters Hub.
Women are trying to get into now.
Suzanne Silantoy is a public policy analyst working at Africa Practice. She was the youngest Nairobi senatorial candidate in 2017 at the age of 23.
We'll get there.
Ruth Bolo is a youth and women advocate. Her expertise is in governance, democracy, and leadership. She serves as the chairperson to the International Relations Committee at the Young Democrat Union of Africa. Bina Maseno is the founder and director of Badili Africa. She is a mentor, speaker, and moderator who uses makeup activism as a political tool to engage young women in civic dialogues. Let's get the conversation started. Bina, let me begin with you. In terms of some of the more pressing issues and concerns that you find women in the groupings that you interact with in Badili Africa, what are they saying? What are they saying on the ground?
So thank you very much, Victoria. So as you rightly asked, at Badili Africa, we work with grassroots women who organize in chamas and young women in urban informal settlement and also young women in the universities. And also currently, some of the most pressing issues that we're talking about is access to good health care. We're talking about poor housing, especially in the urban informal settlement. We're talking about maternal health care. We're talking about loss of job opportunities because, as you're aware, during COVID, it had an impact on everybody. And majority of these grassroots women that we work with are small-scale traders. Most of them had to, number one, close down their businesses and or migrate actually from Nairobi. So right now, the fact that no one is even talking about how they can resurrect their businesses because majority of them are actually breadwinners in their homes. And it means if you close down your business, you cannot even afford to take your child to school. You cannot afford to pay for good health care. So those are some of the most pressing issues that we're actually talking about when it comes to community engagement. Every other day, women are dying. Every other day. We're talking about elections right now. We're going to face electoral violence, and still, they're not making it an agenda. And the people who are going to be impacted the most by that is women and girls.
No, you raised some very pertinent issues there. Suzanne, let me come to you because you've been on the other side where you are vying and you're asking for the vote. What drove you to get into the political space, and how would you say women aspirants should fashion themselves to appeal to the electorate, for instance?
I got into politics because I was very frustrated. I was frustrated about how things are done in the country, and I thought, you know what, I don't know who I'm waiting for to fix this thing. Let me try and do it. So that's been why I got into politics in the first place. And I think something that I've come to see over that period and up to now is there's a big disconnect between what the electorate think a politician should do, someone maybe who's a legislator or a governor or an MCA should do, as opposed to what their role actually is. And so this creates a really big imbalance between what we demand of candidates and what candidates think is expected of them. And that shapes how campaigns are done. So that's why we have this handout culture, whereby we think this person should solve our issues by giving us money, as opposed to maybe this is a senator who needs to be able to keep your county government in check so that you can have proper health care, so that you don't need to ask me for money. And so that forms like a really toxic relationship, especially when it comes to election period, whereby now I guess the electorate thinks you just give me money, I'll vote. It doesn't matter what you do, and therefore the accountability process kind of breaks down, and then the cycle just repeats itself every election cycle. And so because of how the election cycle is set up, it's kind of skewed to just favor men, who probably have more resources, have more influence on how they speak to the electorate, and as opposed to women who are coming in from a space of, I kind of just want to help, I kind of want to do something about this, and you get this steep expectations of you. So that's something that I personally faced. A lot of people would ask for handouts here and there, which I really didn't have. I was just an independent candidate who got into politics on her own accord and was trying to do something about the situation in the country. The other thing was also there's this perception that, and I don't think men get this as often as women do, that you have to have a family so that we can prove that you are worthy of being in the seat. So I didn't have a family at the time. I was 23. So there's this expectation of, where's your husband? How do we know you know how to take care of people before you come and take care of us? Which I don't see how that plays any role with the legislation and being in Senate. So that's something that I thought was a little bit skewed.
No, certainly. And I want to kind of come to the whole idea of, do women vote for other women? And I'm just kind of basing this on some statistics that I saw from 2017. 21 out of the 47 counties had more women voters than men, right? So we have a huge voting bloc that we're not necessarily mobilizing or tapping into. And I wonder, from your perspective, Ruth, how do we begin to do that effectively? So we do see more women on the ballot and then getting voted in as well.
When our women are going to vie, we don't prepare them well enough. We don't tell them the do's and the don'ts. We romanticize politics so much that when they actually learn on the job, and politics, and like many other careers or experiences or the leadership positions that she has mentioned, you can't afford to learn on the job, at least not on campaign. Yes, matters legislation, when you get into the county assembly or senate or whatever, you'll be taken through some induction process, yes. But on the campaign period, you get to learn something every day, and unfortunately, by the time you have already learned, that experience is gone. You might not have the same repeat again. And so the first thing we need to do is we need to equip our women. One, we need to tell them how to finance, how to resource mobilize for their campaigns. Because apart from, as she's saying, the handouts that the electorates expect, there's a lot in terms of logistics. There's a lot in terms of branding and visibility. There's how do they package themselves? That's another thing that we need to tell our women. How do you message yourself? How do you ensure that when you go to certain areas, you speak? The other day, one of the women rep candidates of Homa Bay County students said, you want to vie for women rep? And she said in the mother tongue, point us towards the direction of where your husband is. And so throughout that speech, and of course after that, the conversation was not on what are the women representatives going to do for us. It was more of, actually, you want to represent women, where is your husband? So we also need to tell them, how do you package yourself? How do you send your message and in a way that actually sticks, is very objective? And also we need to sort of just take them through certain capacity building sessions and not more on, because a lot of what is being done is, okay, so when you're going to the political space, this is how you should dress, this is how you should look, but we need to tell them the real situation. We need to tell them that when you go to certain campaign rallies, in as much as you're wearing a dress, because that's what the society expects, ensure you have a trouser inside. So that if one of your electors, because it's quite, we were just discussing with Suzanne earlier, and we were saying electors are not harsh, they are mean.
Yeah.
And your opponents, actually, it is more of, a tooth for a tooth and a nail for a nail. So when you're on the campaign trail and one of your opponents as a woman sends someone to say, go and lift her skirt up while she's speaking, when they do that, you have your trouser inside. So you can easily joke and say, I'm sorry, that was some bad wind, but we move regardless because you'll be okay. But what happens if you hadn't been told that? You wouldn't know that such things happen. What happens if you speak, you're the last person to speak, and everyone else before you has sort of damaged you because of what you are and not who you are? How do you retaliate when you speak without necessarily insulting them? Because again, the electorate judge women slightly more differently than they do men. So when you go on the podium or when you go on the panel and you're also insulting them, then they'll say, we can't do that. And if you look at some of the female aspirants that are very aggressive and are very tough, they're finding it twice as hard because the electors expect you to be soft. At the same time, when you're soft, you're being told, no, you're too soft for us. So as women aspirants, I know they're asking, where do we strike the balance? So we need to really, really ensure that we prepare our female aspirants adequately.
Really quickly from Bina, then I'll come to you, Suzanne, because, just in terms of how women make their political decisions, and you mentioned it, do they have time to watch TV, which is where a lot of this discourse is happening. Do they read the newspaper? A lot of the information they get is secondhand, right, from other individuals, other sources. So how do they then form, this is the person I'm voting for, and why?
There's actually a disconnect between that local woman at the community, the Mama Mboga, in terms of understanding how does a woman in power translate to quality of life for my kids, for myself. There's, just that understanding. And even for the young people, how does even voting, how does participating in election translate to a quality of life, right? How does politics intersect with food? How does politics intersect with menstrual hygiene? How does politics intersect with gender-based violence? How does politics intersect with unemployment in this country? Because the truth of the matter is everything is political in this country. Everything is political. Where you live, what you eat, where you stay, even who you date, everything is political. Is affected by politics of this country. So that is what I see, especially when we work with our grassroots women in terms of connecting. Why is it actually important to have this woman there? And what I've also seen, and which is also a gap, is the fact that even as we speak and capacity build the female candidates, what are we telling the female voters about the value of this person that we're capacity building? So you find that even when I ran for office, I went to all these trainings in civil society. But by the time you go to the community, a Mama Mboga doesn't see the difference between you and another person who's asking for votes, another young man or another man who's asking for votes.
Politics has been branded as, you said, it's not harsh, it is mean. It's ugly, let's be honest, right? How many women want to put themselves in the line of fire? And, especially when you're looking at a space like social media, which is very unregulated, and you have so many attacks that can come on a daily basis. How do women kind of get past that to say, I think I am ready for this? Do you prepare them to make those decisions?
I've come to learn that there's nothing that is impossible. And in fact, me vying taught me that this space is actually not a closed space for people. I vying as an independent candidate, and I ended up getting 32,000 votes. And I thought, you know what? There are 32,000 people out here who thought I'm worth it. And there are probably other people who think that, we can do better in this politics. Why can't we get other people? And so for the ladies who are trying to get into this space, to just think of it in that perspective. There are actually people out here who will believe in you. If you first believe in yourself and be like, you know what, I can do it. But in addition to that, it's also preparing yourself really adequately. Like we mentioned, the electorate is mean and they're really, really harsh with what they say. So if you don't prepare yourself accordingly, if you're called for an interview, don't come and say nothing. Imagine, because they're going to judge you harsher than men who say nothing, because there are a lot of men who say nothing and nobody really pays attention to that. So it's about preparing yourself, finding out what do I need to know about Nairobi to be able to appeal to someone who I'm talking to. What do I need to know about that person who I'm talking to? What are their needs? What am I trying to achieve in this space? Actually taking time to research and read and learn and understand, okay, so this is what is supposed to be done.
As we wrap up, I just want to get a final thought from you, Ruth, in terms of how we normalize or begin to normalize female leadership, right? And this has a lot to do with how women are portrayed in the media. You know, and we have women politicians coming for interviews, as you mentioned. The positions that they hold, such as the affirmative action seats, women representative, oftentimes are seen as token seats and not as real elective seats, you know. How do you kind of get past those perceptions?
First of all, allow me to say this without fear of contradiction. This notion that, I'll start with the nomination seats. This notion that they are token seats, or they are for girlfriends or wives of people, or they are for what, it's fine. Let's get those women there of all kinds of caliber. When they are there and the number of women we want, we have attained it, then we will start looking at the qualities. So let's first get those women there. Because I'll tell you what, in 2013, the number of people, or rather young people, that applied to be nominated were very few. And we ended up having a lot of older women and men who had very good advisors, who had very good legal teams, that knew this is the, you know, gaps that we can use to get into the next government, who got it. So in 2017, more people who were actually within the, you know, the affirmative set groups were then able to apply and get in. So let's get those women there. Once those women are there, we will now begin to look at the caliber of women that we nominate into the various legislative houses. That is one. And two, so the minute we begin to have multi-stakeholder and multi-sectoral engagements, then we are making a step forward. But so long as we have this conversation amongst ourselves, it is Ruth telling Victoria that she needs to, you know, go out, leave the media and go into the political space. And it is Ruth telling Bina, who has already vied, that, you know, this is what you need to do next time. But we are just preaching to the choir. We are not really getting new congregants.
Absolutely. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Bina, Suzanne, and Ruth. Keep the conversation going on social media. #VotersHub, #CitizenWeekend. Let's do this again next week. Bye for now.